The mailman doesn't deliver on a Sunday.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
Anthony for three. Bang! J.R. Smith! We just saw men fly. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Cleveland! This is for you!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me, as always, Chris Nambu. Thank you so much for making this podcast your first listen for NBA coverage. Remember, you like what you're hearing and you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, leave that comment, let us know what you're thinking. You're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave that 5-star review. You do that, we'll keep producing that content. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about trades, the trade deadline. It's only about just over a month away, but there's a few teams of late that have made it very clear that they need a change. They need to make moves, and we're going to be looking at 3 teams from the East and 3 teams from the West. But before we get into it, Chris, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Settling here in Georgia, just trying to keep on track. The Bulls, Kobe, and now Zach LaVine. We got to win, albeit against we won't even say who. We'll just say we got the win. And that's fine. So I'm feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty good to see Zach back in there. But unfortunately, I think he will be a part of this conversation. But excited to get into to see who will pull out of the sellers and buyers list. And I suspect that as soon as we drop this podcast, there's gonna be something that comes up right after. So just be prepared.
Oh yeah, I mean, like that's a given. A completely different trade that we didn't talk about will absolutely happen as soon as this podcast is uploaded. But that's the risk that we run. We'll start out in the East, okay? So the 3 teams we're looking at here are the Atlanta Hawks, the Brooklyn Nets, and the New York Knicks. Let's start out with the team arguably the most desperate, the team that are in the most need of saving, the Atlanta Hawks. They're in a weird situation, the Hawks. I mean, last year there was a bit of a bounce back when Quinn Snyder came in, and they were like, okay, how can they get back to being a winning team? Can Trae adjust? And Trae Young's been awesome for the Hawks this year. Like the numbers he's putting up have been absolutely insane. But unfortunately, as good as they are on the offensive end, they are just as equally as bad on the defensive end. Very similar to the Indiana Pacers, but almost a little bit, I guess, a little bit worse, a lot worse in terms of the record. So this one, the trade that I picked out for them was with the Chicago Bulls.
Oh.
I went a bit of a different way. I think that the offense for Atlanta is going to hold up because they have Trae Young running it. So I think there's no real issues there. So the first option I had was DeJounte Murray and AJ Griffin for DeRozan and Alex Caruso.
That's interesting. Walk me through that. What does
I think
Atlanta look to gain?
Getting just a solid, like a scorer like DeRozan, a vet like DeRozan, who's just going to slot in anywhere and just do what he does, and getting a guy like Caruso to playing alongside of Trae Young, who's just not a good defender, never going to be a good defender, and you just add Caruso in there, a guy who's all about defense. He can instantly make a huge defensive impact. He can, for the most part, guard the best player on the other team in key situations. So that was my thinking there. The defense is the biggest hole for them. Tough to find that two-way player, especially mid-season, but getting a guy like Caruso who's just defense, doesn't need touches on the offensive end, nothing like that. All he is defense, and you're also getting that scoring element back in with DeRozan. I think it's just a smart move for them. Might not change anything dramatically, but I think it would definitely improve them, especially in games where they're in going face-to-face with teams in the clutch.
Yeah, this is kind of the complicated thing about Trae, and I think we deserve to be critical of our trades here. So I'll start off by being critical, because one thing I think that would be tough about the whole DeJounte trade is you want to look for a trade that gets you somebody who works next to Trae Young, because the whole expectation was that there was going to be some evolution of Trae that would make it work next to DeJounte, which hasn't happened. It's been a lot of your turn, my turn, and it's not led to team success. So I guess I'm curious to see, like, we've seen a little bit of that with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, not necessarily in a bad way. I think Zach LaVine can play is a excellent off-ball player, so that's where DeRozan was able to work. off ball, it'll be tough. And I think what Atlanta will have to consider is how much do you get better from that? How much you get better? And DeMar DeRozan, when he's in the right situation, I think will lead to winning on a playoff team. But that's interesting, just a change of scenery. And I think maybe it's like trying to clean up your books a little bit too. I think the biggest part of this is that DeRozan is an expiring contract, and you get a chance to, still possibly get better, but also reset a little bit, because the whole long-term vision of Murray and Trey isn't working out. I'll give you that. And AJ Griffin, has the emergence of Jalen Johnson kind of maybe made the future thought of AJ Griffin a little bit on the back burner? Like you're not really too concerned about what he's going to develop into because of how Johnson has developed, but that one kind of hurts too. And I wonder if they would come looking for a little bit more from the Bulls. I love this trade for me. I think my instant reaction to it was like, oh yeah. And that almost tells me that's a little bit too sweet, but I like it. AJ Griffin is a great young talent.
Yeah, and then I went. There's another option there that I had. I had if the Hawks would give up Hunter, Buffkin, Griffin, and Fernando, just to kind of make the money work, and then possibly a first round pick for DeRozan and Caruso if they didn't want to include DeJounte in that deal.
I think that would make more sense in terms of like going in on defense. Like, dude, like first thing you have to think about is combining both Caruso and DeJounte on the floor. Like you'll be creating so much offense through your defense from that perspective. And I still think the Bulls would still probably take that, given you're still getting some young talent back. If you're getting picks out of that, then I think that's where that starts to work. There's a lot of mouths to feed then in Chicago to develop some of these guys. But that would make a lot more sense for the Hawks, I think.
Yeah, that was kind of the more realistic one. I think that
yeah.
when I was kind of putting it together in my head, and then also they could move on DeJounte in a different trade if they wanted to do that as well.
Yeah, it's funny, man. When you try to make trades for the Hawks, that was a tough assignment for you because, it's hard to figure like who is Trey gonna fit with, and you kind of have to lean towards maybe more off-ball guys, and off-ball stars in this league are really tough to come by.
Yeah, big time. That's a problem that the Hawks need to try and figure out. But moving on to the next team, Brooklyn Nets. This one was slightly tough. I'm kind of stealing this from you from last week, but this when I thought about it, it was kind of the one that made the most sense. And it's Pascal Siakam going to the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets giving up, I'm thinking maybe Cam Johnson and 2 first-round picks, possibly. Maybe that's a bit too much, but I think Cam Johnson, 2 first-round picks for Pascal Siakam. You get the playmaking in, the two-way play, the size, and I think a guy like Siakam could open up things a bit more for the likes of Cam Thomas and Mikal Bridges as well.
So they're right now. Would you even consider them a second round team right now? No, right?
No,
obvious. What does that push them towards?
I guess I think that pushes them towards being competitive in a playoff series, actually putting together something of a run for the rest of the season to maybe at least up until maybe like March or so be pushing towards getting that top 6 seed. They're 4.5 games back on the Cavs at the moment, so like that's a pretty big gap. But I think that Siakam, what he could offer in terms of the playmaking that he has, in terms of the ball handling, to get more open looks and better looks for the likes of Cam Thomas and Mikal Bridges, I think would be important. And I think like you look at the shooting percentage from Mikal Bridges this year has been really poor. I think a guy like Siakam could really help that turn it upwards for Mikal. I think that's what really unlocks this team. Really getting Bridges popping off is what really unlocks this Brooklyn Nets team.
I mean, looking at Dinwiddie, Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith, Pascal Siakam, Nick Claxton, the starting five. This is an easy game to play. Does that make you better than the Cavs?
I think it has you matching up pretty nicely with them, yeah.
I would say so. Does that make you better than the Pacers?
Maybe not, but also there's always you never know with the Pacers. The way the Pacers are, they can just as easily win 7 games in a row as they can lose 7 games in a row. So the Pistons are always or the Pacers rather are always kind of a tough one.
Yeah. And also like I won't rule out a post All-Star break turnaround from the defense. Just from a talent perspective, I still don't understand it. And all it takes is maybe some from court depth, having Siakam out there. And does that click things for them defensively? Does that bring them another weak side help defender? Does that bring them another switchy big wing that they can put out there? And does that all of a sudden unlock the defense they should be? And then all of a sudden you're talking, all right, this is a team that showed they could be top 10 level offense. And now you got like a borderline top 10 level defense. I think just given what we've seen from the Pacers struggling when they really get pressured by an opposing defense and still can't make stops, the Nets could argue that. Magic, are they better than the Magic? With Siakam in that lineup.
Yeah, I think they are.
I think so. I mean, I think everyone's sleeping on Siakam when Siakam is let loose. And I think with the Nets, the unique situation there is that I don't think there's a set hierarchy right now. And that's why teams like that tend to struggle. Mm-hmm. And Siakam, I think, makes that in focus. It's him and Bridges, everyone else get in line. We're pushing in the playoffs. Like, we got a guy. I mean, he is a all NBA level player. And he's in a situation now where he's not able to show that. And Brooklyn, I mean, absolutely, you'd be featured that way. So I don't know if they're a play-in team with Siakam on the team, honestly. If you can get Bridges back on track, if you get that defense back on track with Siakam, I mean, I buy that. And the reason I ask all that is 2 first-round picks for a team like this is scary, very scary. But especially you're losing Cam, maybe one. If you can get one there,
yeah,
that's a deal you can stomach. But that's the price to pay to really get more competitive in the Eastern Conference. And they'd probably look to the New York Knicks. We want to be on that level.
Yeah, for sure. And I think obviously a big part of it, I think the Raptors would love that sort of deal. I think Cam Johnson is exactly the type of guy, like you mentioned last week, exactly the type of guy that the Raptors would love to have on their roster. So yeah, I think in terms of a trade that could really work for both teams, I definitely think that'd be a nice fit.
Yeah, I love the idea that like the Raptors. I hope the Raptors make a quick turnaround here and do trade Siakam and have. I think there's a lot of value to see what you got for a half a season, because so many teams are constantly pivoting. I mean, look half the Lakers roster, like all these new faces. Those are guys that might be traded, and they just got signed last year. Like, it's not a bad thing to try to get ahead and start to evaluate what you have and get a guy like that in the locker room.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go on to the final team then in the East, the New York Knicks. These are the least desperate of all the 3 teams that we're going to talk about in the Eastern Conference here. Are probably the 3
That's the first time
teams
you said that's true.
we're going to talk about all of them. Yeah. Obviously they made their first move, which was getting OG Anunoby in. Looks like a great fit. They've gone 4-0 since he's joined the team. They're looking better. Randall and Brunson still performing at high level with him in the team, and he hasn't really even got going yet in terms of offensively, which is obviously great signs. Now it's like, okay, they still need that superstar trade. Unfortunately,
always.
That superstar trade is not out there. It is not out there. The only superstar trade that's really out there that the Knicks should actually be pursuing is Joel Embiid, and that isn't going to happen. All I will say is Fournier, Robinson, DiVincenzo, 4 first-round picks. Joel Embiid, come on over. But that is not going to happen. I don't see him wanting out. I don't see Philly looking to deal him. But size, a legit big man that can score is the main thing that I think the Knicks really need for what the roster is at this moment. And that's just not out there. And there's other options like a Levine, like a Donovan Mitchell, but I don't really see what sort of difference that really makes for this team. Yeah, it might help them a little bit, but in the long term, I think they'll remain a team that maybe could get into the second round, maybe could one off make a finals run or Eastern Conference finals run. Being realistic, what they should do now, I think, is looking adding a guy that can replace the scoring off the bench that we lost with Emmanuel quickly. And I think the two options they should look at there are Jordan Clarkson and Malcolm Brogdon.
Oh,
I think we could get both of those guys for, I think, Fournier and a first round pick, and maybe you have to throw in like maybe a Jericho Sims or a Deuce McBride in there as well, just kind of sweeten the pot just a little bit. But I think maybe not with Clarkson, but I think if the Blazers got a first round pick for Brogdon, I feel like they would take it, and I think he'd be a great addition to the second unit and a guy that could fill in and start minutes as well. So I think he'd be a nice upgrade to something that the Knicks lost when they dished IQ, but it wouldn't really change the dynamic too much with them.
yeah, I mean, Brogdon he fits so many. I can't believe that he won't be traded by the deadline because he fits so many teams and what they need. I mean, he's a Swiss Army knife. I mean, you put him in, and he's going to take care of the ball. He's going to facilitate. I mean, he's been on a tear offensively, and I mean defensively too. I think you get enough where you're not really worried on that end. Would you
And I
rather
think they,
pay
I would say, I think they need to do that because I think both Brunson and Randall's minutes have been upped significantly since the trade. So I feel like that sort of pickup might be important if they don't really have that belief in the likes of McBride and Grimes to kind of cover minutes as well.
Yeah, for a big, shouldn't Detroit be trading a big? Didn't we call Detroit? Hey, give me snag Isaiah Stewart or something.
He's our superstar, is he?
I mean, they will never. He's too important to them for some reason. But Clarkson would clearly be the cheaper option. Brogdon, he's going to cost you a pick or two, and knowing the kind of protections that are on the Knicks picks too. What if you just went super small? What if you went for Markkanen?
Markman? Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
picks. All the picks. That would take a lot of. I mean, it's Danny Ainge.
Yeah, Danny Ainge loves his draft picks. I don't know. I'm not sure what. I never even thought of that. I would have to look it up, see what if like money wise how that would work. But yeah, I mean, he's not. It wouldn't be a bad option. I mean, it's like I was saying. It's like there's there's enough scoring there. Whether it's legit and whether Randall can really do it in the playoffs, that continues to be the main thing. Maybe it's kind of wait and see this year. Let's wait and see how Randall does in the playoffs this year. Then look at things in the summer. I think that's what the Knicks should do. But I think if the opportunity arises at this moment, they might just bite the bullet and go for it and be realistic and think that superstar just isn't going to come in the next few years for us.
Yeah, the
superstar and they might well be right.
Yeah, the superstar is Jalen Brunson. He's their offensive superstar, and I think that you're gonna be able to rely on that. And maybe you don't get it from Randall, but then maybe you can get something out of OG. You get something from the shooting there, and you get a guy like Brogdon, a guy who's gonna really thrive off the bench. I'm very much down for that Brogdon trade, and I think they should start jettisoning some of these first round picks as they. I mean, these are picks that will lose value as time goes on. Yeah, I'm down for that. I'm down for that. I think they really need to make a push to get another playmaker, another guy on the perimeter. There's not going to be one guy who really fixes things, and you're just going to have to hope, like you said, like at the end of the day, this trade for OG does a lot more for the team, and we're already seeing that. Like you guys, without and the small sample size alert, everyone calm down. But in 4 games, the New York Knicks have a defensive rating of 104. Without him, 32 games, 117. Offensively, already seeing things open up. Already seeing assists tick up. That spacing. You're already seeing 3-pointers tick up. That 3-point percentage tick up. 123 offensive rating with him. 118 without. So if this is early signs of the improvement with OG and you're just kind of improving on the margins, I mean, I totally agree with that. Keep getting depth for the playoffs, and I'm with it.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. Yeah, that'll be the smart thing. And I think that's what the Knicks are really kind of gearing towards. I think they're going to be the guys they have in the front office at the moment are not going to do anything that doesn't make sense for the future. I think they've got some smart heads in there at the moment.
Yeah. So that was our 3 out East. There's gonna be, I mean, so many more. Like, the rumors are just gonna tick up as we go on. It's funny if you try to look up any like any trade rumors, like the first 3 names you see are all Chicago Bulls. Like it goes to Rosen, Levine, Caruso, Vooch. Like apparently we're trying to trade our whole team, even though there are front office. We'll talk about that. But the Vooch one is interesting for me. I was like, I don't know who's taking his contract or who's figuring to work him in, but the Bulls all of a sudden not looking great without him, I think shows a lot about if a team does not have an offensive system. Hey, Pistons, do you want to playmaking center? Just saying. He's clearly the reason why the Bulls went on the run. But I digress. Let's go out west, shall we?
That's good.
Your boy LeBron, dude, he does not look happy. Is this the unhappiest he's been? There's so many moments in LA, but is this the unhappiest he's looked?
Probably, yeah, because I think he kind of feels as healthy as he has since the 2020 season. And I think there's certain moments that you watch and he gets so pissed off with certain guys, like guys like Cam Reddish missing wide open threes again and again. Guys just not clued into his like ability to make passes and his reads, and I feel like he's definitely in a position right now where he feels like he's playing with guys that are below his level, and he is absolutely not happy at all.
Yeah, and it's funny that when reporters are asking about it, they're like, so what does LeBron James do in this situation? Like, basically, when are you going to demand that people get traded? And he's like, do what I always do. Stay positive and show it to work. I mean, what you always used to do was make sure that something happens on the front office end. But that's neither here nor there. What we're talking about is a trade that we would do. And honestly, this is not news. This is not groundbreaking. I did not reinvent the wheel that's been turned and turned and turned all season long. It's the Zach LaVine wheel, and it's one that has been rolling honestly for the past couple of years, and it just makes too much sense. And I really think that everything is posturing. It's all posturing. When you hear teams say things like, this team is hesitant to take on fill in the blank player's contract, it's not because they don't want the player, it's because they don't want to pay that much. And the reality is like everything has to be held equal to what the team's goals are. And the Lakers' goals are to keep LeBron James in LA and win a championship with him. I mean, this dude is showing like if he wanted to sign another 1-year contract and go for it again, they would do it. Like they were running back. Like, he's still that good. And you can still do things with LeBron James as your best player. You can still win a championship with him as your best player easily. And the thing is, like, they still don't have that guy who can create his own shot, who can be an elite off-ball shooter. And you look across the league, who's selling that guy? OG was one of them, and he's not even close to the dynamic movement shooter that Zach LaVine is. Not even close to a guy who can really penetrate the paint. And I mean, not even really, I would consider him a secondary playmaker. So who is that guy? Zach LaVine's pretty much the only one consistently on sale in this league that is an all-star level player that you could argue, okay, now we can rock with that. Because if you look at these other trades like Buddy Hield, sure. Buddy Hield's he's going to improve your perimeter shooting, but he's not really going to address self-creation. He's not going to really address scoring the fast break. And defensively, I would like Zach LaVine is a good on-ball defender. That has been proven time and time again. Off-ball defense, sure. You got Anthony Davis back there. So all that to say, like, we're still here. And I think what ends up pushing this end, and this is like kind of my take on it, if I'm adding my own flavor to this trade, I think you really are going all in on a win this season. And that means getting Caruso back in LA. So getting those two guys, it's going to take a lot. And like when you think about it, yes, Vincent, Prince, Rui, D'Lo for the money, it's got to take the 2 first-round picks. Mm-hmm. And that is the most painful part of this is like it's this hypothetical idea that those picks are going to be worth a lot. And yes, they probably will be. But they have to hold that up against LeBron James, the second best player of all time, playing in LA, frustrated as hell, has no other help, and this is really your only option to get out. Is a guy who's won a championship with LeBron, and the only guy that's available in this league at that level of talent that can actually fix things on the offensive end for them. So, and they get to keep Reeves. That's the third part of this, is like
Yeah.
keeping Austin Reeves while acquiring that level of talent is the biggest part of this, because Reeves has been such a plus for them, and he will need to, he had a rocky start to the season, but he's going to be very, very essential for them to really make another run at the championship. So what say you? Is that are the Lakers that desperate to give up those uber valuable 2 first-round picks for LaVine and Caruso? Because they're sending Rui, D'Lo, Prince, and Vincent on the next plane. Those players are not really, they're expendable at this point. Everybody is expendable.
Yeah, I mean everyone's expendable when you're kind of moving towards that championship, and like Rui unfortunately has shown this year that he is what he is. Like he had those nice flashes in the postseason last year, but unfortunately he's that guy who's for the most part isn't really going to deliver consistently for you. D'Lo is still D'Lo, still not great in defense, still hit and miss with his shot. And unfortunately, that's just come home to roost. I mean, they earned what they got last year. They did a great job to push that team towards Western Conference Finals, which is what they ultimately got. And unfortunately, they got paid, and then they're not really showing up to those same levels again. One thing I will say is I still believe that even if this Lakers team stays as it is, as long as they're in the playoffs, they still will be competitive in the playoffs. Because I think, like we saw in the in-season tournament, when the game slows down a little bit, when things are that there's a bit more tension in the air, I think that's where this Lakers team kind of thrives. And that's why I think they're still going to be in a better position to succeed in the playoffs. Like I would only say 100% the Clippers and the Nuggets are the only teams that 100% would do better than the Lakers in the playoffs at this stage, even as bad as the Lakers are playing. Because I just think the team is built for playoff success. But I don't think they want to go through the play-in. I think they want to get up and be in the top 6 in this Western Conference. And if they want to do that, I think LaVine and Caruso has to be done.
Yeah, I think the going back to the players real quick, about especially with Rui, it's a shame because I think we ended last season very different perspective. Like, oh, we got some guys. Oh, we got some more guys. Like, we already know what our depth is. We know that these are players that will be consistently X, and then they're not. And a little bit has been like some small injuries, but yeah, disappointing to see that that's not the case. And for the purpose of their goal being the plane is not an option. I mean, they can't risk that. And ultimately, you need to be able to have an argument like we can make it through the Nuggets. Because I mean that sweep was not a flip. Like they simply like laid off shooters. They created a wall, and at the end of the day, like the Nuggets still have enough people. They've proven that they've revamped their depth. They have a real defense that's going to compete for another championship. And can they stop Jokic from doing what they did? No, but they need to be able to keep their offense up. Like their offense died, and they did not have anybody to go toe to toe with Jamal Murray, anybody to really be stretching the defense out, get them scrambling, and they still don't. And if they don't have that guy come Western Conference Finals, they're not going to make it there. Like straight up, like the other teams in the West, I think they could survive with that. But really, when it comes down to it, it's all about can you get through the Nuggets, because Jokic is going to be knocking on that door again.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and at this moment, absolutely not. They're arguably a worse team as much as like LeBron is arguably playing a little bit better. AD is definitely playing better in terms of two-way guy, but in terms of like the outside of that, they're still way off of the Nuggets, and the only realistic trade that's out there is a LaVine. And if you got to do the combo with Caruso, I think that's what they should be pursuing. I think just the LaVine trade, I don't know what they would be being asked to give up, but I think they should definitely be forcing it to be a combo there.
So next guy, or team rather, I'm saying guy because John Morant is clearly the Memphis Grizzlies. he's brought some life back to them. I don't think that they're really fully shown yet. You know, they've not fully reachieved their level of offense that you'd expect them to have. Do we qualify them as like a must trade team? Like they're a team that must. I mean, none of these teams are must, but based on what we perceive, like right now, they are 12 and 23, 13th place. They're 5 games out of the play-in, so they're kind of there, but it's going to be neck and neck. They might not make the play-in. I mean, just based on the fact you got the Lakers, another team right there. So on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being absolutely, 0 being like not at all, obviously. What is your number level of
I'm feeling
stress?
like
Like I need to
six,
make it.
6.5, maybe. I
Six
feel
and a half.
like,
I'm kind of
yeah.
there. Yeah, I'm kind of there. But I think they get 7 games behind. They get eight games behind. Then you're like, oh yeah, because I think one thing that's constantly coming up is the strength of the 2024 draft class and what is the value of that pick, and that value is just going to keep going down as the college season goes on and scouting reports become a little bit more firm, and there clearly isn't anybody except for Nikola Topic that anyone cares about, and why keep that pick? So for me, they were a team that I looked at like they could do something by trading that pick and trying to stay relevant in the playoff hunt. Because right now, if they made it into the first round, who are they beating? Like, are they beating the Timberwolves in a first round series?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. That's dude. I am a John Morant guy. I am a Grizzlies guy, but the T-Wolves have been too good. T-Wolves have been too good. Are they beating the Thunder?
I guess you'd have to say no, but like I said before, kind of we'll wait and see on Thunder in the playoffs.
Yeah,
But
because
yeah,
it's wait and
yeah,
see,
you
right?
have to say no.
It's no playoff experience. But I mean, who's the best player? And again, Shea puts that is actually really interesting. Comparing the two, Shea versus Ja, and then you got Holmgren versus Jaren Jackson Jr. I know exactly who I'm picking over that. Um, but I think there's seriously like a difference in talent right now that is meaningful beyond just catching up. And doesn't matter if you get Brandon Clark back. Doesn't matter if Steven Adams magically gets better. Um, they're missing something. So my trade idea was to get another veteran there, um, and really beef up, no pun intended, their front court. And I think that the Pistons are in a great position to do this. Bojan and Isaiah Stewart, aka Beef Stew, for Kennard and Zaire Williams, and a top 5 protected 2024 first round pick. I mean, it gives them a great. I mean, Bojan is super underrated for being able to play make out of off the wing. He's not just a guy who's going to stand there and catch and shoot, but he's going to be able to probe the paint. He's going to be able to, be, I think, a better, more responsible playmaker than Marcus Smart at times. And he's going to be an option to really lead the offense in a way that you can't really get from the wing anywhere else. And I really hate sending Zaire out of there, but I just think he needs to change of scenery.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Detroit is the place, but he's a guy that hasn't popped the way I thought. So what say you, Bojan and Isaiah Stewart? Does that kind of even the odds a little bit, give them a little bit more juice?
Yeah, I love that trade, to be honest. I think that's the favorite trade either of us have come up with so far today. I really like that.
Nice.
I think that's a really smart move. I think it's one that works because I think the Pistons are still a team that are happy to have draft assets. They're still a team that hasn't figured out who their best team is, and I think they know that at some stage Bogdanovich is going to move on. Like he's not going to be there throughout this whole rebuilding period that they're still going through. They get a young piece in Zaire who could pop into something of a role player. Maybe we expected that in Memphis. We haven't seen it of yet. And I think the size, the scoring, the playmaking that you get in from Stewart and Bogdanovich, I think that definitely makes me more confident in the Grizzlies sustaining a run that can drive them towards the play-in come April.
Yeah, and I think those are guys that kind of fits, like they fit the Grizzlies' style and their vibe. Like Isaiah Stewart, absolutely, I think he fits that physical style, and they really need someone who's going to be tough on the boards after losing Adams, and I don't know when Adams will even come back. But being prepared to have a guy like that in the playoffs is necessary, and Boyan, I don't know if there's going to be a bidding war, but I mean, Boyan is a guy that think checks a lot of boxes for a lot of teams. So he's a guy that's definitely going to be valuable.
Yeah, I think someone's definitely gonna have to pick him up. I'd be a little not shocked, but a little bit surprised if he's still with Detroit after the deadline.
Hey, you never know. Unless they go on a little run here, they go on a little run here. Maybe they're convinced to keep him. Now the Warriors.
The big one.
So I think we've already established they're not trading Clay. They're not trading Draymond. That's not ever happening. There's too much politics there for that to ever happen. So we know that the big trade probably won't happen in terms of breaking up the core. But now that you have Chris Paul down, now that you still really need front court depth, that's something that they've struggled with. Hopefully they make this trade before your fake trade happens, because I think that Brogdon and Jeremy Grant are two guys that are for sale. The Blazers clearly need to make room in their backcourt. Jeremy Grant doesn't fit the timeline. Kind of a weird situation where he signs and then Dame's gone. So what does that take? That takes Wiggins, Chris Paul, and I think that takes a top 10 first round protected pick in 2025. Maybe is that enough? 2 picks might be a steep price. I don't know how many first round picks are going to be shelled out for Jeremy Grant. I just don't know who's in the market really for that, except for the Warriors need Andrew Wiggins who can actually be Andrew Wiggins, and Jeremy Grant is essentially showing that right now. I mean, I don't know what's going on with him. Wiggins is just clearly falling off, and Jeremy Grant's still showing that he can still create an offense, and he's still a great defender, still a great one-on-one defender, and I think he's going to provide exactly what they had from Wiggins defensively when they're making their run. So what say you, Brogdon and Jeremy Grant? Does that offer enough, playmaking and offer enough revitalization of their defense and creation from Grant? Does that fit in there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it offers them something they don't really have at this moment. I think it beefs up the team more than I think just one player could do. And I think it fills gaps where they need. I think it would provide that bit of extra balance to the team. I think like Brogdon's just Mr. Reliable, Mr. Steady Eddie. Like he'd be a great addition to this Warriors team. And I think Jeremy Grant would be a good upgrade. I think he'd be someone they can rely on a bit more compared to, like, obviously Kuminga's spoken out about his displeasure. Obviously Wiggins has kind of fallen off. I think what you can get from Jeremy Grant is a bit more consistent. And once the consistency is there and you have Draymond back, the defense beefs up a bit. Then you start to look at the team and go, okay, Warriors are kind of ready here. Not usually one for a team that likes to make moves mid-season or anything like that, but I think they know they're in a pretty as close to desperate as the Warriors have been in a long time. And I think a trade like that makes sense.
If a team called about Brandon Podziemski, would they hang up the phone?
No. I think unfortunately they're in a similar position to what the Lakers are in. They're an aging team, but they're trying to get whatever juice they can left out of this team to really try to push with Steph Curry for as long as they can. So I don't think anyone outside of Clay and Draymond is untouchable. I think they're kind of hear a call for anything. One thing I would say is possibly you feel like the Blazers would want to get 2 firsts if they're giving up Grant and Brogdon. I feel like they'd want a first for each one of those players. But the vet addition of Chris Paul, what Wiggins showed for a season in Golden State.
Yeah, he's not going to demand the ball. You know that.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I guess it depends what sort of value the Blazers place on that, but I feel like they'd want to get 2 firsts in that deal.
Yeah, 2025 would be the first, and then they would have to be 2025 and 2027. It would you'd have to be arguing like that is essentially putting them back on track to win a championship. And it's the Warriors are another tough team. We said the Hawks are tough to predict, but the Warriors are especially tough because of the unique style that they play, and you don't know who can really fit in that. Who is really going to intuitively be able to play off of Clay, off of Curry, really fit into their schemes of setting the picks at the right timing, cutting at the right time, really playing off of Draymond as well in the short role. Like those are all little things, and you'd have to expect it has to be a veteran, it has to be those kind of guys. And I guess that's why Brogdon and Grant fit the role, but there's no really perfect trade for them here. And unless it's honestly, it's simple, but unless Klay Thompson comes back to who he was, and unless Draymond figures it out from that end, I don't think there's a trade that's going to save them. But you hope that if they get a little bit of depth, they get a little bit more size, and I think that's what Grant offers. Grant offers better size, and they need that. And Kuminga, I don't know what to do about Kuminga, because I want to see Kuminga on a different team. I want to see him successful in another situation, but I just looking across the league, I don't think anyone's out there like seeking to acquire. Like there's plenty of young wings out there, guys very much like him, that are still trying to grow in their own role there, and he just hasn't had a chance to show enough there. And I feel like it's sad to say, but I feel like Moody and Kuminga are approaching like a junction of their career where they haven't had enough opportunity to grow, where they may not ever even reach that. And this whole dream of bridging the gap that they had before just may be a waste of a couple of very talented young guys. And I don't know if this trade deadline will fix that for them or for the Warriors, but it's kind of like the worst of both worlds right now, where they're not competing and their young guys are just failing to grow there. It's sad.
One thing I did see is apparently the Jazz are a team that are very fond of Jonathan Kuminga. So I don't know if there's any sort of move that can be done there, even if they made that move for Grant and Brogdon, and then got back a couple of a pick maybe for trading Jonathan Kuminga. I don't know if that's something that could happen, but we shall see. One final question then for you. Out of the teams we discussed here, which team do you believe is the most savable?
Oh, that's a good one. Lakers, we'll do process of elimination. Warriors, no. I man, it's got to be the Lakers, right? It has to be the Lakers. Hawks, and who's the least savable? I'll posit it that way. I think Warriors and Hawks are the least savable, in my opinion, based on how they're built. Lakers, I think, turn this around pretty much immediately. If you woke up tomorrow and Zach LaVine and Caruso are on your team, like that, I think that vaults them into a top 4 team in the West. Like going forward, I think they would be on a crazy pace.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think it's just, yeah, like at the moment they're just stuck, just can't shoot, can't move. It's so slow when they play. It just looks awful. They need that switch, and I think that switch is there, and that's the big thing. Usually it's not there. It wasn't really there for them last year. I feel like it is there for them this year. That real switch.
Who do you think is going to be the team that should make a trade that won't make a trade?
Ooh, that's interesting. I mean, I guess probably the Nets. I feel like they're kind of falling. There's a gap is starting between the top, I think, the top 6 teams in the or the top 8 teams, I should say, in the East, and I think they are in a position where, not that they're desperate that they have to do it this year, but I think there's enough talent there and enough seniority there that they shouldn't be allowing a season to just go by without trying things. But I feel like that's the way it could go.
Yeah, I mean, right in that conversation, obviously the Bulls. Would the Cavs be making a mistake to not make a trade? 0 trades by the deadline.
I would say yes, but at the same time, like I wouldn't. There isn't really a trade out there. I was like, that's what they need to do. That's where they need to go with this. That's the only way I would think about that.
What about the Pistons? There's so many teams that I'm like, what they need to.
Pistons could do anything. I don't know what like. There's no answer for the Pistons. The Pistons are just
decline.
Pistons
decline.
are just
I decline to answer.
Yeah, I declined to answer per my Fifth Amendment rights there.
Yeah. What one guy that you did not address that I was hoping you would is a guy who will now be making what is it? He'll be on his 4-year, $235 million contract next season. Karl Anthony Towns. Obviously, he's proven that he's part of the winning culture there. He's part of the winning plans. He's playing defense. He's attacking the rim. He's really showing to be a multi-dimensional player that he is. But he's going to cost a whole heck of a lot. Would you be shocked if they moved on from Cat to avoid paying that repeater tax?
No. Mid. I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked. It would kind of like, oh, and then kind of like, oh yeah, it kind of adds up. Just yeah, for the fit in New York. I would just want, like, obviously, I want Embiid. Obviously, that's who I want. It's just not realistic, but that's who I want. I want a guy that can average us. I want a guy that can average like 17, 18 points a game, would also get us 10, 12 rebounds a game, just be a legit rim protector. I want a better version of a Mitchell Robinson. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. I just don't know if Cat provides exactly what this team is necessarily looking for, but at the same time, the spacing that he provides would be good for this team. It could work, but I'm still not convinced that it would really change things, similar to like a Donovan Mitchell or a Zach LaVine.
Yeah, that's fair. Any closing thoughts on the current trade market? And well, if we just mention them now, maybe they'll happen an hour from now. We've clearly established that.
Yeah, I mean, like it's fun. I mean, it's cool that there's guys who seem really available, and like that's the weird thing. Like, I feel like every year a randomer comes out that we weren't expecting that gets traded, but this year it just feels like there's a lot of guys out there that are available. There's a lot of teams that need to make moves, and that should make for exciting viewing over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think this might be the most active. It has to be. There's so many teams that can argue that they can win the championship this year, as was last year. But there hasn't been a guy like Pascal Siakam just right there in your face. I think maybe I'm just having an overly positive view on Zach LaVine, but a real game changer for the Lakers, even though they're talking about not liking the way his contract is structured. But teams that can really fix themselves, like LeBron James, that sounds like a perfect story right there. My main thought is, will Kyle Kuzma get traded from the Wizards? Mm-hmm. That's my last closing thought. A guy who's like, he's having quietly a career year. He's looking really good. Does anyone want Kyle Kuzma? Nobody wants Kyle Kuzma. He's just gonna stay in Washington. He's just gonna keep doing his podcast out there, just chilling.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's how it could go, but I mean, I guess it's just what the cost would be. What would they want from? I feel like they'd want 2 first-round picks.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah, nobody's calling that.
I feel like he would. What they'd want that for him. Like he's a guy I feel like they want to build around. So I think that's why I think he might end up staying there, for just price wise. They're not that desperate to move on from him. So yeah, I think price wise might keep him in Washington. But hey, what do I know, huh?
Maybe send him back to LA. Get him and Caruso back in LA, and then you finally have exactly what you needed. Call up Denver if KCP is available. But yeah, I think that does it here. I think we hit most of them, and there's so much more. Pelicans, even we didn't get a chance to really figure out there. Hornets, they're
not figuring out the Hornets. Hornets will suck forever. That's just simple.
There are some roster enigmas in this league, man. Yeah. There are some roster.
Kings and Pelicans are both teams that they need something. What that something is, not 100% sure. Maybe they know. Maybe they'll make moves. But the teams we discussed, can they be saved? Do they want to be saved? Will they make moves? It's definitely something to keep an eye on. Lots of teams that need to make trades. Lots of potential all-star caliber players that are going to be available. The trade deadline just about a month away. Going to be exciting. We'll be keeping you up to date on all of that and more. But going to finish up for today. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you all so much for listening. Remember, we are everywhere at Coast to Coast NBA. And most importantly, remember, take every shot and love every moment.
Peace out. Also, great J. Cole reference. Was that a J. Cole reference? They don't want to be saved?
That was not a J. Cole reference, but I just
No, that was a J. Cole. I got to give you credit for that.